Tony, I shared a lot of my thoughts about the combine at the top of the show. I know, obviously, you were there as well and interviewed all the players. Anything from those interviews that stood out, or anything about the workouts? I know they didn't do a lot of working out, but anything from you what were your three or four main headlines coming out of the combine?
Well, and my main purpose for being there this year was to talk about the 2025 team and get feedback on those guys. So I think my main takeaway was when Denzel Burke started talking about Julian Sayin and how impressive he is and how he's the guy. And then I think Lathan Ransom echoed that. So anytime Denzel Burke wants to talk about somebody, I'm going to listen, because he doesn't just throw names out there for throwing them out there, because we can go back to the Cotton Bowl against Missouri when he was asked about Jeremiah Smith. And he said, I'll have to see it. He's a high school kid, so I'm going to need to see it before I believe in anything. And then, one spring practice later, he's like, okay, I believe it. He's legit. And so even after this past season, Denzel Burke was like, Will Howard did all right. He led us, he was a quarterback for a national championship, so you can't take that away from him. He's like, he's never going to be effusive in his praise of somebody unless he's like really, really impressed. So my main takeaway was that some of these outgoing Buckeyes are pretty impressed with Julian Sayin, which I think is good news, because of what Ohio State fans and certainly members of the media will remember is what the throw against Tennessee that was not, did not look like a collegiate throw, which was 4 hours standing around in the cold, then throwing a ball, on an out route, and it doesn't look impressive. So I'll take Denzel Burke's word for it, as I have for all 4 years of his career, because, as I always say, he is the arbiter of Buckeye truths, and when he speaks, I listen. Although he did say, when somebody asked him, who are some guys that we're not talking about right now that we'll be talking about a year from now, and he said, I think this is going to be CJ Hicks's year. And so then I asked him, where do you see him playing that it's going to be his year? Because that's not going to be Will linebacker, because that's Sonny Styles. And he was headed towards the line of scrimmage with Jim Knowles, and we'll see where he is, because as Denzel answered, he's like, well, you got a new defensive coordinator in Matt Patricia, so we'll just have to see. But I think he's going to have a good year, and so that's another one. Cody Simon could not speak enough good things about Arvell Reese replacing him, so I think that's also a positive.
James Peoples got talked up at running back. I think maybe Henderson or Judkins popped him up and said, yeah, he's going to be really good and form a nice tandem with C.J. Donaldson, the guy, the 2,000-yard career rusher that they brought in from West Virginia. It's going to kind of be thunder and lightning, again, about a 20-pound disparity between the two, just as I read what Judkins was in at 221 and Henderson was in at 203, I think, were their measurements at the combine, and that's kind of how they played. The Judkins was the thumper, and Henderson was the breakaway guy. If you didn't know what they weighed, you could probably guess it just by the way that they played. So that was, if they reprise that tandem, if there are poor man's representation of Travion Henderson and Quinshawn Judkins, I'm here for it. So, we'll see how that all comes together. I did hear a lot of praise for Julian Sayin, a lot of talk about how he has great arm talent, quick release, a live arm, all these things. I want to see it this spring. I want to see how it translates. In my chat on Monday, I was asked, is he big enough? Does he have enough running ability? They list him at 6'1", which is on the smaller end of what you would want in a starting quarterback in the Big Ten. But we've seen guys that size have tremendous success before as well. So, Baker Mayfield's probably in that range. And, he was a star college and now is really coming into his own in the NFL with the Buccaneers. So, you look at it, I'm trying to think if there was anybody else. I talked to Donovan Jackson, and he was so excited about Luke Montgomery and Tegra Shabola, Carson Hinsman, Austin Sierraveld, and kind of where they're going to go with that offensive line. I think we'll see in preseason, or rather the spring, whether the two incoming transfers, Anianwa and Daniels, are going to be the guys at tackle, or if somebody else is going to step into one of those roles. One of those four guys I mentioned maybe steps out. I think Tegra Shabola would be a natural, perhaps, if he has the athleticism to play the tackle position, but he's got the size, certainly. So I don't know, Tony, what anybody else that was mentioned or stood out, or any other thoughts, I guess?
Yeah, and then there's a bunch, I guess, that we can talk about. Denzel Burke also mentioned Marlon Graham as a guy that has gotten better, that they would go head to head quite a bit, and Denzel Burke would give it to him basically to try to get him better. But I don't know if it was Donovan Jackson or one of the offensive linemen talking about, Josh Padilla is coming on. He's going to be a good backup center this year. Also, Ian Moore at right tackle. I think what you're going to see is I assume Ethan Onianwa has to be the left tackle, probably pretty early in spring. Generally, the transfers don't just start with the ones. Seth McLaughlin may have, but like Josh Simmons started, I think, with the threes when he came in June in fall camp. But there really is no left tackle, so you figure you're going to go with the fifth year guy. I think you'll see Ian Moore as the number one right tackle at the start of spring, redshirt freshman who got better as the season went on, and by the end of the season was ready. He was in the two deep as a true freshman. Phillip Daniels as a redshirt sophomore, got some experience with Minnesota last year. I don't see him coming in and then them putting him immediately with the ones. It's not a great message. And so, like, who is the number two left tackle? Steve mentioned like Tegra Shabola. When his teammates talk about him, they talk about how athletic he is. He did not have the greatest year at guard. He got better, as you would expect. That rotation at guard, something's going to have to happen there. Are they going to do it again with a new offensive line coach? When I asked Donovan Jackson at the combine, were you surprised that the 3-guard rotation worked so well? And he paused and he answered, no. And then so then he admitted like there was some.
Yep.
He wasn't sure about it as they were trying to practice it, but then it was working in games, and he was like, "Yeah, just like I knew it would. It worked just fine." But are they going to run
all the
that
way?
back? Exactly. Are they going to run
Yeah.
that one back? I don't know. A couple guys had some good things to say about Kenyatta Jackson, not just as a player, but as a leader on the defense. So I thought that was interesting. Caden McDonald was brought up, talking to Ty Hamilton about him, because basically whoever you're talking to, you then say, well, who's going to replace you? What's going to happen there? And Caden McDonald, or Ty Hamilton was talking about Caden McDonald. Asked some guys about Edric Houston, and Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau both said like he could be an All-American. He could be as good as anybody this year at defensive tackle. We did not get to talk to Tyleek Williams, who I guess was stuck in medical limbo, so we missed him to talk about Edric Houston there. I thought it was interesting. Lathan Ransom at strong safety was asked, who's going to replace you? And it's going to be Jalen McLean or Malik Hartford, but he didn't want to give a name. He said, it'll be one of those two guys, and they both worked really hard, and they're always studying with him and Caleb Down. So whoever it is, will be fine. And then Emeka Abuka was asked for, give us a name of somebody that nobody's talking about that's going to have a good year. And he said Jalen McLean. So when the names come up unprompted, like I say unprompted, like nobody asked Emeka Abuka about Jalen McLean. You ask this open, give us some names of some people. That way they have to like actually, think of something. So I think those are when players and coaches just start bringing up guys unprompted, and you're not asking about a specific person, and they start talking about somebody, then that always means more to me than like, hey, tell me about Jalen McLean. Oh, he's great. Something like that. And I thought that we got some good names over the course of a pretty long week.
Yep. Hey, I'll throw in on Friday, media are going to have an opportunity to interview Ryan Day, as well as, it seems, most, if not all, of the assistant coaches, which would include but not be limited to Matt Patricia, the new defensive coordinator, and Billy Fessler, the new quarterbacks coach. Who's the new offensive line coach? It slips my mind.
Tyler Bowen.
Tyler Bowen. Yeah. So maybe those guys will all be available on Friday. If anybody has any questions that we should ask Coach Day or any of the assistants, please post them in the chat, and we'll take your questions the best we can to the coaches. Serious questions only. We don't want, what do you like to eat for dinner, or where do you go on vacation, or anything, silly like that. But if you've got something that just is driving you crazy and you want to ask the coaches, throw it in the chat, and perhaps Tony or I will take a whack at it if and when we get a chance to speak to some of these guys. And for Coach Day, he's been making the rounds. He's been doing both local and national stuff. And now he's going to sit in front of or stand, I suppose, in front of a group of local media, probably talk for 20 or 30 minutes and answer questions there. So if you got questions for him or any of the other assistants, post them in the chat.
Sounds like you guys have been around once or twice when there's that one media guy who is asking everyone that they where'd you go on vacation, or he's got just the one feature piece that he's working on, and that's it.
Well, you get these guys for 12 to 14 minutes at the combine, and we got this one, I don't want to say I can't say what I want to say, but Flip Blank, who is asking about, what kind of car he drives and all this other stuff. And it's just like, dude, we ain't got time for that. So, if you grab him on the side, if you're going to ask stupid questions that nobody else cares about.
Although it is, I did not care for how difficult it is actually to grab somebody on the side at the combine, because they're pretty militant on a lot of these guys. Like, no, you can't talk to them.
I think for the high profile guys like Agbuka, Judkins, Howard, maybe one or two others, they put them through the car wash, which is, as Mark knows the term, at ESPN, you go through all the different platforms. Well, there at the combine, we have the interviews on one side, and then on the other side, you have Bleacher Report, NBC Sports with Mike Florio, CBS Sports. Chris Sims is over there, Sirius XM. ESPN is there with Laura Rutledge and Molly McGrath, two of my all-time favorites. And, some of the other national outlets that are there that, have those podcasts, and, CBS Sports we're affiliated with. They're doing, HQ both on the CBS Sports Network and also live on a webcast. And so they're interviewing guys for all those different shows and platforms, and people are gathering stuff for their draft coverage and everything else. So, I think for some of the potential first, second round guys or high profile guys like Howard, they wanted to get them over with the rest of the media.